Okay, so if you've clicked on this video, you're likely preparing to have your own C-section and you'd like to know exactly what to expect. So today what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my experience and my story. So before we get started into today's video, if you have not already, please go ahead and subscribe. And if you could also give this video a big thumbs up. Also, if you hear a little voice in the background, that is my son Ezra. He has just woken up from his nap. Ellie is down for her nap, so I figured there was really no better time than to film, but now. So let's get into it. Okay, so as soon as we found out that we were in fact having twins, the next decision that we had to make was whether we were going to try for a vaginal birth or we were going to go ahead and opt for a C-section. My doctor's recommendation was to go forth with a C-section, and so that's exactly what we did. At the end of the day, it wasn't my ideal birth plan, but as long as my children were coming into this world safe, healthy, and I was also going to be okay, that's really all that mattered to me. So being pregnant with multiples is a lot different than if you are preparing to have a singleton. Typically, if you are having twins, your doctor will not let you go past 38 weeks, depending on what type of twins you actually have. Some types of twins, there's a bigger risk if the longer you wait. And so therefore they like to deliver you a few weeks ahead of time, so that, you know, there's really no complications, because as far as I understand it, the further along you go, or as the closer you get to your due date, I should say, you have risks like stillbirth, and a whole slew of other things. So guys, it's looking like I'm always gonna have a special little guest in my videos. This is Ezra. In my last video, you saw Ellie, and this is my little chunky guy. So surgery day, we were scheduled for 10 a.m. and they required us to be there 3 hours early so that we could check in and they could verify my insurance, get me prepped, and all of that good stuff. So they told me that the night before my surgery, I could not eat or drink anything but water past midnight. So that was okay. I didn't really have much of an appetite anyways, the closer that I got to the end of my pregnancy. Not only that, I really didn't have a whole lot of room to be just shoving snacks and meals and all of that in my gut. So anyways, we get to labor and delivery, and they verify my insurance. They have me sign a bunch of waivers and a bunch of forms. And they have a bunch of nurses come in and tell me what I'm going to be expecting. And a couple of the things that happened were, right away, they started an IV, and they went ahead and took some blood. I'm pretty sure that they were just like basically giving me fluids until, you know, the surgery started. So we did that. Which, by the way, like, the nurse that did my IV was absolutely terrible. My blood was squirting everywhere. It freaked my husband out right from the beginning, and he's already not good with, you know, like surgeries and surgical procedures and all of that. So anyways, so they're getting me prepped. Now, in that 3-hour time, they've done the consent forms, they've done the IV, they've also hooked me up to monitors to obviously monitor both babies' heartbeats and make sure that they weren't stressed and whatnot. And so also during that 3 hours, the anesthesiologist, I remember coming into my room just to explain to me like what was going to happen in the OR and what type of anesthesia I was going to be getting. And of course, when you go in for your C-section, the types of anesthesia that you're going to be receiving are either an epidural or a spinal. I think it just depends on the hospital or your provider or your circumstance. I I really don't know. So mine was an epidural, but from what I researched before I had my cesarean, it was supposed to be a spinal. So the first thing that they had me do when we got into the OR was they had me hop up onto the surgery table, and they had me clutch a pillow in my lap and completely hunch all the way over as far as I could. So this was the absolute worst part for me. I'm really, really weird about needles in my spine. I'm sure a lot of us are, but that was the part that freaked me out the most. And so I had this really nice nurse in front of me holding down my shoulders because I was so incredibly tense that I was holding my breath. I was like tensing up my shoulders. I wanted it to be over so, so bad. But unfortunately, something happened where the first one that they gave me, it didn't take. And all I could feel was just like this, like electricity down my left side of my leg. And I kind of started freaking out, and the anesthesiologist could tell. So he takes that out and they do a second one, which I was not in my favorite zone there. So he takes out the first one, like I said, and he goes to do the second one. It takes about 10 minutes. I don't really know how long it's supposed to take, but it felt like a literal eternity that I don't ever want to go through it again. So anyways, they finally get the epidural done, and they invite my husband into the operating room. And since we had twins, they had two sets of, I guess, baby nurses and staff. So they had also asked me if I would mind if medical students were there to witness the surgery. And of course, I didn't mind. I mean, there were going to be like 25 people seeing me, get cut open and have my babies. It didn't matter. It really didn't matter if like 3 or 4 more people were going to be in the room. So anyways, my husband finally gets invited into the room, and from the time that they actually had me on the table ready for surgery, completely anesthetized, like doctors ready to go, it took about 45 to 50 minutes. And that's pretty typical for a singleton, and I really thought it was going to take a lot longer because of the twins, obviously, but it really didn't take long. So what I felt during that time was a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of tugging. You don't feel the actual surgery taking place. You don't feel them cut you, and that's obviously because they've given you anesthesia, through an epidural or a spinal, but you don't feel that. What you feel is a lot of tugging and a lot of pressure, and you sort of can feel, this isn't everybody, but you can sort of feel like there's something heavy sitting on your chest, and that a lot of times can be the anesthesia. So if you do experience that, what you have to do is you have to just basically look up above you to where your anesthesiologist is and tell them. Because when I felt that way, I told my anesthesiologist, and he adjusted something. I'm not sure what, I have no idea, but he adjusted something, and just a couple seconds later, I felt totally normal. And so my husband was able to, like I said, come in, and he wasn't able to watch them, do the entire procedure, but he did sit up by my head, which is where your partner will also go. And they did their thing basically, and they let my husband know right before they were about to pull out my twin A, which was this guy here. And then he could lean over basically and take some photos of the whole thing. I really thought that my husband was going to pass out. This man is not good with blood. My entire pregnancy, I would get nosebleeds, and it would freak him out. So I was like, this is not going to be good. Anyways, He didn't pass out, thank God. But we got the pictures that we wanted. My son was born at 10:50 on the dot, and my daughter born at 10:51, which was so cool because, like I said, I thought it would take a little bit longer, but they were only a minute apart. And as soon as they were out, the anesthesiologist gave me something that literally put me on cloud nine. I didn't feel anything still. I was really nice and calm. It was not a terrible experience at that point. And all my anxiety was just gone. The moment I heard my kids and saw my kids, that was the most amazing part of the entire thing. I mean, that's the reason why we're there. So I got to see the babies. They brought them over to me, but it was only for maybe about 15 to 30 seconds. And then they were whisked away to have a checkup, and they went with my husband and a couple of nurses. They spent some time stitching me back up, and I'm pretty sure that they gave me something to fall asleep as soon as the surgery was over, because the next thing that I remember was waking up in my room, probably like an hour or less after the surgery, and my kids were actually in the NICU. That's a story that I'll get into in another video because that is a whole other topic all on its own. Now, the one thing I do want to mention to you is that the hospital is going to be giving you what's called an abdominal binder. And that's a really, really stretchy compression, like a faja that you're going to wear after your surgery, and that completely speeds up your recovery. Do not sleep on the abdominal binder. And if your hospital is going to provide you one, they have to. But if they don't, make sure that you ask for it because it's essential to your healing. And you feel a lot better when you have that on. It literally feels like your guts are going to fall out of your stomach when you stand up after having a C-section and you don't have that on. You'll wish that you did. So if they don't offer it to you, make sure that you ask for one, because again, you'll feel so much better if you have that. And other than that, you basically are going to be in your room recovering until your epidural or your spinal wears off, which is usually somewhere between 6 to 8 hours. In my case, it wore off, I think around 4 to 6. I don't really know. It was probably at the six hour mark. And I was probably just a little bit foggy afterwards. So, make sure that you have a nurse or your partner, your husband, girlfriend, whatever, there to help you out of bed until you actually are stable. Don't try to be a hero. Please trust me. I ripped open my my scar or my incision. That way, thankfully, I was still in the hospital, but I thought that, I was basically Superwoman, and I wanted to, just get this process over with and go see my kids in the NICU. And I really did the most during my recovery in the hospital. And so that's why I tell you, if you can help it, make sure that you take the time that you need to actually, recover, because it is a major surgery, and it's one that as women, we are expected to get up and walk, 6 or 8 hours later. And so, with all that being said, my recovery was actually pretty good. I did have a few complications with my incision, developing a seroma, which is just some fluid inside of it, once we were home, and it was probably about like 6 weeks later. But that has nothing to do with the actual C-section itself. That's just something that you might want to look into as far as aftercare for yourself. You also will not be able to pick up anything heavier than 10 pounds. Make sure that your partner or whoever your support person is helping you. And if you don't have that, make sure that you ask a nurse. Make sure that you... Exactly. No, but really make sure that you are being safe with yourself because, again, it's a major surgery and, you know, things can go wrong. But all in all, my experience was a good one. It was just very, very nerve-wracking. So now that you know what my experience was like, if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe and give this video a huge thumbs up. As I said in the beginning, it helps out my channel tremendously, and I'm a new creator here. So I really appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye. Say bye. Bye, guys.